Everyone is always like, are you sure this is right? Why am I pouring water on my cake? And it's everything that you're told, do not do. I'm like, yeah, do it in this recipe. It's going to work.
No.
Hey everyone, welcome to my home kitchen. This week's genius recipe is for a simple, rich, delicious chocolate cake that stirs together super quickly and it even makes its own sauce. Okay, so I feel like we got it, right? We got that part? Okay, so now we say... This recipe comes from Benjamina Ebuehi, who you may know from season 7 of The Great British Bake Off or from her beautiful cookbook, The New Way to Cake. And just like all of the recipes in this book, this one is incredibly unfussy and delicious, and it puts together flavors that I never would have thought to put together before. So in this case, it's chocolate, coffee, and sesame. And today we're going to be using the sesame in 2 different ways. If you like the sound of this recipe so far and you want more recipes from geniuses like Benjamina, be sure to hit like and subscribe and you will get all of them.
Benjamina, what is the baking magic that is going on with this recipe?
This is such a fun recipe. Also a really good one to do with kids because it is just so weird when you are making it. And so you make your cake batter as normal. It's like a 1 bowl recipe, super easy. And then you get that into your dish. And then what you do is you pour on like hot water and cocoa and sugar and some coffee, and you pour that directly onto the batter in your cake. So it just sits on top, and then you've got a really just literally a pool of liquid sitting on the batter. And it's at that point that you think that you've probably done something very wrong. And then when that's in the oven, the cake, you've got 2 layers. So the cake at the bottom just kind of cooks and it rises up, and then the liquid just sinks down to the bottom. And then when it's cooked, you're left with this really rich chocolatey sauce at the bottom, and it's just very delicious.
Very delicious. Yes.
Very delicious.
We're rolling everything?
Everything is rolling.
We're not on slow-mo this time.
I don't know.
I'm going to chop my halva, and I have to confess, this is less halva than the recipe calls for because we ate it all. If you haven't seen halva before, it's delicious. It is sesame seed candy from the Middle East, and it has kind of like a crystalline texture, so you get a lot of crunch when you're biting down. So chop it as big as you want. I do like it in big chunks because that means you can definitely find them later. Like they melt in a little bit, but they also stay intact. So imagine that there's 2 to 3 times as much halva as there is right there. Chopped chocolate is next. You could use chocolate chips instead if you want. I will leave this in pretty big chunks. That is all of the chopping. And now mixing this together is so simple. First you mix the dry. This is some flour, some light brown sugar, some cocoa powder. I'm using Dutch process, but I think that natural would also work here. Some flaky salt and a little bit of baking powder to help it lift up while it's baking. This all gets whisked together. Mike, do you want to come in? See the excitement? Okay, that's pretty good. If you see any really giant lumps, you can kind of just get in and break them up with your fingers. Time for wet ingredients. So I've got some melted butter, some milk, egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Whisk that together. It smells really good. Now wet is going into dry. Now this all just gets stirred together. Check it out. Now we have cake batter. I think there are still a few little lumps of the brown sugar. My brown sugar was a tiny bit dry, but I think that's gonna be okay because this is not a perfect, pristine cake. This is the kind of cake that you want to just dive into. And it's got all these different textures and all of these messy, gooey things going on. So I think that little pockets of brown sugar, even if they make it through, are gonna be just fine. And now I'm just going to pour it into this cake pan that I have buttered.
Kristen?
Yes, oops, uh-oh, what's up?
Sorry, are you in the chocolate and the halva?
Oh, nope, yep.
All right,
All set?
all set.
Okay, well, I got ahead of myself a little bit. When I get a baking recipe that's this easy, where I just dump a bunch of things in a bowl and I pretty much have cake,
I do it wrong.
I do it wrong. maybe I skipped some steps. So now don't forget to fold in your halva and the chocolate. That looks much better. Man, I was talking about all those textures, the great textures that were gonna be in my cake batter, but I did not have the items that were gonna make those textures. Thank you, Alik, our producer, for saving me once again. Now we scrape it into our greased cake pan. Benjamina calls for a 9x12 pan, which is not the most common size in the US. So I'm using a 9x13, which works great, but you'll just need to bake it for a little bit less time because it'll bake a little faster. This needs to just get spread out to cover the whole cake pan. And it will look a bit thin, but that's okay. It's gonna puff up once it starts baking, plus there is more to it than just this batter, as you will soon see. Since I'm only using a third or so of the halva that I'm supposed to, I'm going to take Benjamina's optional step of swirling in some tahini that she suggests. I have never done it before, so I can't guarantee how it's going to look or turn out. Based on some quick YouTubing last night, here's how I'm gonna try and do it. I'm gonna just put on little spoonfuls of tahini here and there, and then swirl them all around. Looks pretty cool already, huh? I wonder what would happen if we just baked it like this.
This is not the format.
So tahini, if you're not familiar with it, is ground up sesame seeds, also from the Middle East. So both the halva and the tahini are going to be adding sesame flavor that goes really, really well with the chocolate and the coffee that are already in this recipe. So here's my swirling. Let's see what happens. All right, I think good things are gonna happen here. This is fun. Does that sound genuine?
Oh, I want to go.
I mean it, this is really fun. Looks pretty good. I bet it's not gonna look like that when we're done baking for reasons that you will see momentarily. There's one more step to this recipe that you're probably not going to want me to do when I go to do it, but it's key to making this self-saucing pudding. So first I need to get some water boiling. Really fast because that started boiling. I'm gonna tell you that this has some cocoa powder, light brown sugar, and some espresso powder, and some boiling water. I think you might wanna get close for this one.
Okay.
Not too close though. Use a heat safe bowl for this because boiling water is going in. This just needs to get whisked together. Mike, do you know what I'm about to do with this?
Yeah, don't do it. Oh no, Kristen, don't do it. Oh no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna do it.
No, no, Kristen, don't do it.
So now is when you take a whole bunch of just boiled water and sugar and coffee and cocoa powder and pour it all over your beautiful cake batter and your beautiful tahini swirls. Okay, so what's gonna happen when this goes in the oven is that the cake is going to expand and puff up from its leavening, from the baking powder, the flour, the egg, all those things catching air and getting lighter. And as it does, it's going to rise up, and this boiling water sauce is going to sink down below it as their density switches. You will have fluffy cake floating on top of gooey hot chocolate sauce, self-saucing pudding. A picture is worth yada, yada, yada. 350, 28 to 35 minutes if you're using a 9x12, but because I'm using a 9x13, I'm gonna check it early, Also, because my cake pan is metal, it's going to cook faster than if it was in a heavy ceramic pan. So I'll check it at like 20-25 minutes, see how it's doing. It's been 20 minutes. It's looking good. It should be puffed and just set. Benjamina doesn't call for this, but like if you just want to be certain that your cake is cooked, you can check, and there it's got just some crumbs on there, not tons. If you see a little bit of goo, don't worry about it because that's probably the sauce on the bottom, but you can kind of tell what's batter, what's crumbs, and what's delicious gooey sauce underneath.
We're gonna feed this to our kid and see what happens. Wind it up. Watch it go.
It's true, she won't have a lot. Okay, here you go. There's some of your cake. Here's a little more cake I'll get you. Yeah, are you excited about this? Oh my god.
That big bag.
Yeah, you.
That was a big bite. Yeah, you're almost done. Wow.
More.
You need more?
Mama.
You need more from my bowl? If you think that you have had a cake like this before, a self-saucing pudding, a chocolate molten pudding cake, whatever you might call it, maybe you've had a cake like that, but I don't think you've had a cake like this, because this is the one that has the coffee and the sesame, and all of those flavors play together so nicely. They all have different kind of variations on like bitter, sweet, smoky. It's so good. I have a hard time thinking of eating this any other way than just with vanilla ice cream on top, like the warm brownie sundaes that I grew up eating. But Benjamina has other ideas. You could pour cream over it. You could eat it just as it is.
More.
Whatever you do, just
a bit more.
make sure you have a little bit more when you're done. Thanks so much. Let me know, what would you do with this cake? What would you stir in? How would you serve it? Would you do ice cream? Would you do something else? Let me know in the comments, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully we will have come down off of our
That
sugar rush.
do need.